has shown thee, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of thee? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to your weekly news broadcast, MoCo Resistance. My name is Harold Maldonado, giving you a big welcome to this week's episode, number 40, which we have entitled Supreme Court Exposing MCPS. Today is April 30th, year of our Lord 2025. Today we're going to talk about what happened last week, where the case against MCPS rejecting parents' request to let their kids opt out of LGBT books and material has reached the Supreme Court, and this has been going on for since 2022, when MCPS decided not to allow parents to take care of their kids, or to let them opt out of them being exposed to sexualized books and material. So this shows again that the Democrats controlling the county are disingenuous, they're liars, and they are spewing propaganda. All the lies about being inclusive, saying diversity is our strength, is a complete lie. And the whole country, not only the county, is seeing the truth about the Democrats, who are lying, and they support criminals like MS-13, and they have judges covering for cartel members, for organized crime. So when Republicans, GOPers, when we say that Democrats in the county work close to organized crime, we're not exaggerating, we're not giving you false statements. We are saying the truth, and this is a fact. Everything that we say is becoming a fact with the actions of Democrats at all levels. So this is the case here also in Montgomery County, where teachers and MCPS have been forcing our kids to attend or to view material that is inappropriate for young kids, inappropriate for any type of curriculum that is basically set forth to teach the core subjects in schools, especially in our elementary school kids and kindergarten kids. So this case has reached the Supreme Court, and it's a big deal. So we'll touch on three things today. We're going to, of course, talk about what the opt-out. We're going to talk about the arguments presented by both sides, the lawyers, the counsels representing the parents, and also the counsel representing MCPS. And of course, the final point is that all this shows that MCPS pushing narratives that go against the principles and ideals of minority parents, who want their kids to learn the core subjects, and they don't want their kids to learn about sexualized education. So it's a great I knew this was going to reach the Supreme Court, because we know now that the judicial branch of our government at all levels is compromised. It's compromised by judges who protect and defend criminals, who do not protect and defend regular citizens, and do not protect Americans. And here we have another case where the district judges and the district courts in our state, in our county, have decided not to rule in favor of parents, which is a direct violation of the First Amendment of our Constitution. So let's get started. Before we start, we'd like to ask you to please subscribe to our channels at Rumble, YouTube, Telegram, and TikTok, and share this information far and wide. We need this information to reach every household in the county and beyond. Right, so let's get started with the opt-out. This is a picture. This is the case, Mahmoud versus Taylor. This was docket number 25-297. argument. The arguments were presented on the 22nd, 2025, so last week. And the opinion is to be determined. Of course, the vote to be determined. So, and what is the summary, the issue at hand? Whether public schools burden parents' religious exercise when they compel elementary school children to participate in instruction on gender and sexuality against their parents' religious convictions and without notice or opportunity to opt out. So it's very simple, very much to the point, and we'll go ahead and start. All right, so we have our first tweet. We have a tweet from Beckett. One day ago, religious parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, are asking the Supreme Court to restore their right to opt their children out of storybooks that push extreme ideology regarding gender and sexuality. The Supreme Court will hear the parents' case tomorrow. So this is a tweet from April 21st, and we'll watch the video, which I think is very well done.
Religious parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, including Muslims, Jews, and Christians, are fighting for the right to know what books teachers are reading to their kids in elementary school. In 2022, their school board introduced storybooks on sensitive topics such as pride parades, gender transitioning, and pronoun preferences. Teachers, for example, are told to tell kids that doctors guessed at their sex at birth. Parents were initially told they'd be notified and could opt their kids out when the books would be read, but then the school board went back on its word. A coalition of religious parents sued. They're not trying to ban the books or change the curriculum. They just want to know when the books are read so their kids can be excused. By excluding parents, the school board is violating its own policies, Maryland law, and years of Supreme Court precedent. Beckett is defending their right to have a say in educating their own kids.
That was a good summary of the case and why this case has reached the Supreme Court. It's basically a very simple request by parents to let the parents know when these materials are going to be shown in school, and so parents can their kids can be removed from this material, from being exposed to this material. They're not asking the school system to remove the materials from the school system or from the curriculum at all. So, and again, this is the larger objective of this is to normalize and legalize pedophilia. That is the reason why Democrats are pushing this at all levels. This is why you have members like Evan Glass, council members like Evan Glass, Mink, and everybody in between that support LGBT materials and drag queen shows and everything sexualized. So this is not by accident. This is not has nothing to do with being inclusive or being respectful of other communities. We here at MoCo Resistance, we respect all communities, and we respect the LGBT community. They're another community, just like others in the county. We respect them. They can do whatever they wish they want to do in terms of their activities. They're adults. They can gather and create their activities, etc. But do not come to expose your ideals of immorality to our kids. We are going to defend, and this is how we as parents defend our kids. We will go to the extreme. We have mama bears, papa bears everywhere, not only in the county but all over the country that are supporting us. So let's continue. We have a tweet from Kathleen Richardson that says, now, the Supreme Court arguments in Mahmoud versus Taylor, which considers whether religious parents can opt their young children out of mandatory reading of LGBTQ storybooks. This is one of the books in the case. What are your words? My pronouns are like weather. They can change depending on how I feel. So this is again inappropriate. This is part of that book. Sometimes I just feel like one set of pronouns. Sometimes I change my pronouns. Sometimes I use all the pronouns that I can think of. My pronouns are like weather. They change depending on how I feel. This is completely wrong. This is completely, kids should be taught there are two genders, male and female, and when that kid reaches the age of adulthood, 18, they can be whatever they want to be. They can do whatever they want to be because they will be adults. But young kids, to focus on telling them, you're confusing the kids. You are distorting their mind, and this is indoctrination. This is pedophile indoctrination. And again, we have logical people who are commenting on this case. We have a tweet from Mark Thiessen here that says, here's the thing. Parents should not have to go to the Supreme Court to opt out. They should not have to go to their school board to opt out. They should be able to opt out of crazy schools that teach radical gender ideology in the first place. The answer is school choice. Yep, 100%. And he's retweeting a tweet from Kristen Wagner that says, so an overwhelming number of parents try to opt their kids out of Montgomery County's reading program. Maybe the problem is with the program, not the parents. Good point. So I'll let you hear what Alan Schoenfeld, the counsel of MCPS, said.
In the country has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The county has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The other Maryland counties have opt-outs for all sorts of things. And yet for this one thing, they changed in mid-year and say no more opt-outs. I'm just not understanding feasibility.
So again, I think what's in the record is that with respect to these books as they were deployed in the classroom, there was high absenteeism in some schools. For example, dozens of students being opted out in, I think Mr. Baxter said the average size of an elementary school in Montgomery County is 700 students. So each grade is 125. If you have dozens of students walking out, making arrangements for those students to have adequate space and supervision and alternative instruction, I think is infeasible.
But they do it for all sorts of other opt-outs.
They don't do it for all sorts of other opt-outs. There's a limited universe of things that students can opt out from. The Family Life and Healthy Sexuality curriculum stands alone. It is mandated by the state. It is something where you are able to predict precisely when the curriculum is going to be deployed. There's It's
the most similar substantively to what we have here, and there's an opt-out allowed there. I guess I'm not understanding why Montgomery County School Board stands alone. I think in the country. You can tell me if there's another school board that's done something like this.
I apologize.
Both the kind of books that are being used and prohibiting opt-outs. And I guess I'm just not understanding. The whole goal, I think, of some of our religion precedents is to look for the win-win, to look for the situation where you can respect the religious beliefs and accommodate the religious beliefs while the state or city or whatever it may be can pursue its goals. And here, they're not asking you to change what's taught in the classroom. They're not asking you to change that at all. A lot of the rhetoric suggests that they might have, that they were trying to do that, but that's not what they're trying to do. They're only seeking to be able to walk out so that they don't have to, the parents don't have their children exposed to these things that are contrary to their own beliefs.
I understand, Your Honor, and there may well be
Yeah, so there's the council protecting and trying to make a logical argument that the system, MCPS, is not doing the wrong thing. Logistically, not feasible. That is complete BS. This guy wonder what his sexual preferences are. Anyway, let's continue. We have a tweet from Glenn Robbins, and he says there is an LGBT lawyer arguing at the Supreme Court that children must read gay porn in school, and parents cannot opt out their 3-year-old child and must read gay porn. 2 liberal justices, the ones that don't have children, said your child must be exposed or go to a different school. This is purely satanic. Guard your kids and get them out of public school if you can. Yep. I would have to agree with that 100%. So the whole world, and not only in the county, the whole world and everybody in the country is looking at this case. And this is madness. The MCPS should not have to have reached the Supreme Court on a simple decision to let parents opt out. you got 3-year-olds reading gay porn, and you have here again this guy Alan Schoenfeld. I gotta give him props. He's lying his teeth out, and he is spewing propaganda and trying to defend the undefendable. Let's hear him out. What he says to Gorsuch.
Mrs. Gorsuch?
I just want to make sure I understand a few fact things and then a law question. What age do you, in Montgomery County, teach students normally about human sexuality?
I think that it begins in either 4th or 5th grade.
The human sexuality class?
The Family Life and Human Sexuality curriculum.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure.
Starts in 4th or 5th grade, you think?
So.
Is there anything you can point us to in the record on that?
I don't think so.
Okay. And second, these books are being used in English class.
The division between English class and other things in a 2nd grade classroom doesn't really exist. You're sort of in a room with a teacher, and sometimes.
No, I appreciate that. I went to 2nd grade too.
Yeah.
But it's part of the English curriculum that these books are being used in. I thought that was.
Yeah, I'm not fighting the premise. I'm just saying that
it's not the math class.
It is not.
It's not the human sexuality class.
It is certainly
English
not
class.
the human sexuality class.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of fighting the premise that there's a neat distinction.
Okay, and they're being used in English language instruction at age 3. Some of them.
So Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's
right?
not bondage. It's a woman in a leather.
Sex worker, right?
No.
No?
That's not correct. No.
I read it.
It's a drag queen.
Drag
So-
queen and drag
Correct.
queen.
The leather that they're pointing to is a woman in a leather jacket, and one of the words is drag queen in the search.
And they're supposed to look for those.
It is an option at the end of the book, correct?
Yeah, okay. And you've included these in the English language curriculum rather than the human sexuality curriculum to influence students. Is that fair? That's what the district court found. Do you agree
I
with
think
that?
to the extent the district court found that it was to influence them towards civility, the natural consequence of being exposed.
Whatever, but to influence them.
In the manner that I just mentioned, yes.
Influence, yes. Indoctrination.
And responding to parents who are concerned, you agree that there was some intemperate language used?
I don't know that those were responding to parents who were concerned. This was after the fact for most of these comments. And this was in a very public setting, which obviously got heated, and some intemperate comments were used, certainly.
Yeah. And I wanted to understand your context that you.
That was the comment made by Kristen Mink, who said that Muslims are white nationalists and they're Nazis, basically. So, and the council from MCPS is trying to play that off. But Justice Neil Gorsuch has read the material and is right there. So, again, shows the disingenuous lies and propaganda that this council is continuing to extend from MCPS. So, right, let's continue.
That some Muslim families, it's unfortunate that this issue puts some Muslim families on the same side of an issue as white supremacists and outright bigots. I think in response to Justice Sotomayor, you're trying to give some context to that?
I don't think I was speaking directly about that comment. I think that comment was given or was made in June, which was several months after the decision to withdraw the opt-outs was made. I don't have context for that statement, no.
Okay. And then the legal question.
He doesn't have context to it because he doesn't want to talk about the context in the Supreme Court, because he knows that's wrong, that shows that MCPS, that the council, and especially Kristen Mink, they're racist. They are racist against minorities. They're racist against religious people. They're racist against conservative values. They're racist against anybody that opposes them, basically. All right, let's continue.
Why isn't discrimination against religion a burden on religion? If a state, now this is hypothetical, not moving away from the record, if state actors intentionally discriminate against religion, what secular purpose, valid secular purpose, could that serve? And how wouldn't that be a burden?
So I don't know. I mean, it depends on the hypothetical, what the state is doing and whether there's a secular purpose. That's hard to imagine one. But if the state is discriminating
against Muslims or Catholics or Protestants or whatever.
I think this court has recognized that when an enactment that discriminates on its face, or has recognized with respect to an enactment that discriminates on its face, it is intrinsically coercive. That's how the court has performed the burden inquiry. If you are privileging one religion over another, you are coercing people to subscribe to that particular set of beliefs in order to get...
So that's a burden?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's continue. We have a tweet from Kaylee McEnany that reads, a Maryland school district thought it was appropriate to teach 3-year-olds about drag queens, among other highly salacious material. The school district does not even allow parents to opt out. This is crazy. This is totally inappropriate and is not being deliberated by the Supreme Court.
Protests erupted outside the Supreme Court this week as the justices debated a wild landmark case on parents' rights to opt their kids out of reading LGBTQ storybooks. And when we say kids, we're talking about 3-year-olds to 5th grade. So 3-year-olds reading these books. Listen to this. Some of the controversial books at the center of the case include Prince and Knight, which centers on 2 men who fall in love. Born Ready is about Penelope, who, quote, knows that he's a boy. The problem is getting everyone else to realize it, because that's what 3-year-olds need to be thinking about. And My Rainbow focuses on a young transgender girl who wants long hair like her dolls. In this book, titled Pride Puppy, it's a picture book aimed at 3- and 4-year-olds, and it instructs kids to look for items they might find at a gay pride parade, such as underwear, lip rings, drag queens. All things my 2-year-old is not asking about right now, but yeah, send him to school and maybe he'll start asking. Listen to this one moment. It's between Justice Neil Gorsuch and a Maryland school district's lawyer. Gained a lot of attention when Gorsuch questioned the content that is in that specific book. Watch.
And they're being used in English language instruction at age 3. Some of them.
Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's not bondage.
A little bit about my morning. I have a 5-year-old. I have a 2-year-old. You're about to have a baby yourself. My 2.5-year-old son, Nash, ran up to me with the Bible Stories book, and we began reading that together. He can barely speak. He can put together a few words, not yet a sentence. But somehow the lawyer for the Maryland school district thinks that my son needs to be reading about drag queens. And he thought he had gotten Justice Gorsuch when he said there's no bondage, it's drag queens. Newsflash, 2.5-year-olds do not need to be reading about this. I doubt you will be reading that to your new child.
Absolutely not. And you know what's funny is the lawyer seemed surprised that Justice Gorsuch had actually read the content that was being made available to, like you said, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And my husband and I are expecting baby number 1 this year, and education is definitely a concern. We live not too far from Montgomery County, and it's pretty outrageous that we have to be on the lookout for policies like these. Parents deserve better than this. And there was another really clarifying moment during the oral arguments that I listened in on earlier this week, and it was when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was speaking, and she said that you have a choice. You don't have to send your kid to a public school, rejecting the idea that somehow this material placed an undue burden on parents who simply want the option to opt out. They're not even asking the schools to get rid of the books entirely. They're just saying, we want the option to not have to expose our children to that. And number one, I find it very ironic that Justice Jackson apparently endorses school choice in that case. Of course, we all know that she doesn't. But it's interesting to me that the leftist justice and many others on the left only seem to apply this standard of choice when it comes to leftist ideology. You might think that she would then apply that standard to other issues, such as which bakery you should patronize. There are plenty of other cases where she has actually come down on the exact opposite side of the aisle. So I do find it a bit ironic there.
You know, there was this interesting moment, and it was from Justice Kagan. Now, Justice Kagan was appointed to the court by President Obama, so she doesn't often side with the conservative side of the court. But listen here, she may in this case.
These are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this.
I mean, Arthel, you could see a universe where this is a 7-2 decision, and Kagan may be breaking with the conservative wing.
Well, because I don't think it's about left or right. Here's the deal. I remember, I know we're talking about kids who are younger than this, but I remember in my Catholic elementary school in New Orleans learning about male and female anatomy and how babies are made biologically. Now, in terms of kids being exposed to if, when, how, or not, about people's sexual behavior and patterns and choices, what have you, but that's up to the parent. And not every parent is on board with that, nor should they be.
You know, Lisa, Kaylee made a key point. This is about opting out. And I want you to listen to Justice Kavanaugh. He drives that home. This is just about opting out, just saying, I don't want my kid to learn about sex yet at 3.
They're not asking you to change what's taught in the classroom. They're not asking you to change that at all. They're only seeking to be able to walk out so that they don't have to, the parents don't have their children exposed to these things that are contrary to their own beliefs.
And the lawyer responded, well, there weren't enough kids in class because too many were opting out. Well, maybe that should tell you something.
Well, what I think this is about is it's about indoctrination and it's about dividing the family. And if you look at places like the Soviet Union or Maoist China or communist states, they want loyalty to the state over the family. And they use education and youth groups to try to divide the family and to indoctrinate the youth and pit the kids against the parents, report them, turn on your parents. And that's what they're trying to do here. And you can see even, big picture on some of this other stuff. If a teacher tells Paulina that she can be Paul, by the way, don't go home and tell your parents, does that not divide the family? Does that not pit the kid against the parents? And that's what they're trying to do here. And that's why to reasonable minds like us on the couch, this doesn't make sense. We're like, this is crazy. But if your intention is to indoctrinate and to divide the family, it makes perfect sense.
Douglas, my daughter came home yesterday talking about math and 1 + 1, and she's in pre-K, and I thought that's what you're supposed to learn in school.
That seems normal.
It's
normal
It's
stuff.
really crazy when you think about it like that, isn't it? If you look at educational standards across the West, particularly in America today, look at the levels of literacy, K through 12. Look at the levels of numeracy. In a state like this, people leave their formal education and about half have failed in basic literacy and numeracy. So when I hear teaching unions and others saying, we've got to tell the 3-year-olds about drag queens and so on, I think, why don't you just teach them first? Teach them the basics that are going to set them up for their lives. I mean, this country is meant to be, we want to be competitive on the world stage. We've got China and others coming in to try to eat our lunch. Do we want to produce a generation of people who are literate and numerate and leading the world? Or do we want to teach people from the age of 3 the most important thing you can do is kind of like do the drag queen story hour? It's very strange. And there's one other thing quickly, Kaylee, you mentioned your child this morning. There's that famous quote that if from G.K. Chesterton, that if people stop believing in God, it's not that they believe in nothing, but that they'll believe in anything. If you go to a bookshop in this city, in particular New York, but I'm sure it's the same on the West Coast, go to the children's section, just look at what is on offer, and you see this kind of stuff. It's all as if they're worshipping the great god drag queen. And drag queens are great for adults if they want to see them, but why does this have to be the litmus test to force on American children?
Great point on the last video, because this is a plan. This is a well thought out plan to destroy. The ultimate goal is basically to destroy the country. But how do you destroy a country? You don't destroy it by sending missiles or sending troops to charge to go over the border and do an invasion. You do it by internally infiltrating all aspects of government and society, and you destroy it from within. So what is the basis for any civilization, any country, any republic? It's the family. It's the conservative family, nuclear family that is strong, and it's the basis to construct a productive and prosperous society. And so the enemies of the country, the enemies of the state, are trying to divide and conquer, destroy the family structure, destroy family, the nuclear family, and push these communist, socialist, Marxist ideals into our society. So if you're hearing this for the first time, wake up. All right, let's continue. We have gays against groomers. Okay, so this is an opinion from the other side, and it says the Supreme Court referenced the sexually obscene children's book Pride Puppy in this week's oral arguments on the legality of parents opting out of LGBTQ plus lessons. So here's a gay person, LGBTQ member, and this is what he had to say, and I would have to agree with him 100%.
The Supreme Court of the United States referenced the book Pride Puppy in oral arguments on whether or not parents have the right to opt out of LGBTQ lessons in schools.
So Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
This disgusting book has been trafficked into elementary schools all across the United States by social justice teachers and transgender activists. Drag queens, sex toys, and the teachers union, they promote it. How this is even in schools is beyond the pale. Even preschools have this book. Every page has some kind of sexual innuendo and transgender theme. This is sick. You are either so woke your brains are falling out, you're a predator, or a damn fool if you want to give this to kids.
Yeah, so the end goal is also to destroy the family, the nuclear American family, and also to push an agenda which embraces pedophilia. That's the end goal. You have a lot of illegals coming in, and they are raping, they are molesting kids. This is a well thought out plan by the DNC to destroy the country, and this is how they're doing it within. So wake up. If you're new to the subject, if you have kids in school in the system in our county, this is the material. This is the stuff that has been going on for 3 years at least. Right. Let's continue. We have Laura Ingram. It says the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh pressed Montgomery County on its refusal to let parents opt out of radical sex ed books. Their intolerance is so extreme they even lost Justice Kagan. The case should be a 9-0 slam dunk for parental rights. I agree with that 100%. Let's hear Laura.
Parents say no to woke insanity. Yes, that's the focus of tonight's angle. Donald Trump promised to make America great again, but he wasn't just talking about the economy or our health. Public education also needs rescuing. Sex and gender radicals, we know they're working overtime to sideline parents, subvert their authority, and keep them in the dark, if at all possible, about what their kids are learning. But today at the Supreme Court, a case out of the far left Montgomery County, Maryland, should give us hope that slowly but surely we may be reclaiming the high ground in our schools. First, understand this. Montgomery County, Maryland school board members think that parents have no right, none, to object to their children being exposed to sexually inappropriate, most would say deviant materials. Second, liberal parents love having their sons and daughters steeped in this filth, but the parents objecting are actually themselves a diverse group.
Hundreds of parents complained, mostly families from Muslim faith and Ethiopian Orthodox, who were objecting when they spoke to the board. The board accused them of using their religious beliefs as another reason to hate, accused a young Muslim girl of parroting her parents' dogma, and then accused the parents of aligning with racist xenophobes and white supremacists.
Okay, this is sick stuff. By the way, do you think those folks came legally from their homeland to come here to have their kids taught like that? I don't think so. That's not what they thought they were getting in America. But the books in this curriculum are for, remember, kindergarten through 5th grade. To give you an idea what 5-year-olds in Montgomery County are learning, look no further than Pride Puppy, about a dog going to the Pride Parade with its family. At the end of the book, there's even a search and find word list. It includes the words intersex, drag queens, lace, and leather. Lovely. Justice Kavanaugh today pressed the Montgomery County attorney about why they simply didn't allow students to opt out.
Every other school board in the country has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The county has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The other Maryland counties have opt-outs for all sorts of things. And yet for this one thing, they changed in mid-year and say no more opt-outs. I'm just not understanding feasibility.
With respect to these books as they were deployed in the classroom, there was high absenteeism in some schools. For example, dozens of students being opted out.
I love saying the book's deployed, but that's it. Look, they force total compliance, no opt-out, because total indoctrination is their goal.
Montgomery County offers a free public education to parents only if their children use books featuring same-sex relationships and transgender issues. That burdens parents of multiple faiths whose religious duty is to shield their young children from such content.
100% right. But congratulations, Montgomery County. You're now known as the religious bigotry capital of the United States. You're so intolerant, you even lost Justice Kagan.
I, too, was struck by, these are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this. And then you add in religion, and that's, even more serious.
So, yeah, MCPS is being exposed to this craziness, and you heard the arguments that were presented, and here's a summary of one of the justices, Justice Jackson, and she said, I quote, "I guess I'm struggling to see how it burdens a parent's religious exercise if the school teaches something that a parent disagrees with." She added, quote, "You have a choice. You don't have to send your kid to that school. You can put them in another situation. You can homeschool them. How is it a burden on a parent if they have the option to send their kids elsewhere?" So this is end quote. This is the mindset of these radical justices, these judges who have been bought and being paid for by the international globalist criminal cartel, who are dead set in introducing pedophilia and making it normal in the country, in the county, in the state. All right, let's continue. The logical response from the public has been overwhelming in support of the parents. Here we have a tweet by Erica Donald that says, "I pray the Supreme Court upholds parents' rights in Mahmoud versus Taylor. The government schools' imposition of radical gender ideology on children undermines our sacred freedoms." Correct. I'll let you hear what she had to say.
Joining us now, education activist, the wife of Florida Congressman and gubernatorial candidate Byron Donalds, mother of three, Erica Donalds. Erica, we're so excited to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of this case?
Well, this case is so important to uphold, as you said, the rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their children, whether that is religious, moral, character building, academic. We believe that parents must be in the driver's seat. They have to be decision makers. And in this particular case, there was an opt-out, but so many parents opted out of this controversial curriculum, which was being given to pre-K through sixth graders with radical gender ideology. It was disruptive to the school day. But instead of addressing the controversial curriculum and respecting parents' rights, Montgomery County decided to take the opt-out away completely and fight it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, that's something, because, even gay people say this is wrong. Lawmakers say parents have every right to protect their 5-year-old children from lessons in sexuality. Congressman Wesley Hunt says the left is prioritizing gender ideology over reading, math, and science. Even a New York Times columnist, Megan Stack, who wrote from her home in Montgomery County, she said what schools are doing is wrong. She says this is not about banning books. It's about protecting children and an opt-out. That's what this is about.
And really, we should address that these are not age-appropriate books. And why are they being embedded into the English curriculum instead of a specifically sexual content curriculum that parents can opt out of? There is an ideological bent here that the school district is allowing through public tax dollars, let's remember. But this is why parents are opting out in a different way and plummeting district enrollment across the country. 55%, according to Gallup, are dissatisfied with the American public school system. Parents are losing faith in the ability to trust the public school system to uphold their values and respect their religious liberties.
What do you make of critics saying any school board member fighting to show books with sexual content to 5-year-olds, they shouldn't be allowed to be around 5-year-olds?
It is a major concern for parents around the country, and it has driven the Moms for Liberty, the parents' rights movement, this growing concern among parents that their rights are continuously being violated, not being respected. And that's why school choice is also a very popular policy that is growing by leaps and bounds across the country. Parents want the ability not just to opt out of radical ideological curriculum like we've seen in this case, but to opt out completely out of the public school system that refuses to respect them as the primary decision makers for their children.
So this indoctrination has a purpose to also dumb down our future labor force. That's why Trump and his administration are focusing on eliminating the Department of Education, because it has nothing to do with improving the level of education, the reading levels, the math levels, and to the overall improvement of our education system. So here we have another tweet on Real America's Voice. SCOTUS looks poised to rule in favor of parents. And again, it's just another example of how this case is being presented to the public and how the public is reacting to this. This is a no-brainer. This case should not have reached the Supreme Court, but I'm glad it did, for two reasons. One is going to expose the racist, sexualized, corrupt, criminal curriculum that is being forced by MCPS, its leadership, the superintendent, the county council, the teachers union, etc., etc. So this is going to be a showcase, and it's going to show the world that people are not happy. Residents are not happy with what's going on in the county, and this is going to expose them. I would think parents should wake up to this. I mean, this case has reached the Supreme Court, for God's sake, and this should be a warning sign to every resident in the county that it's just another example of how the council and our overall county government lies to us all the time. All right, so we have Capitol Report NTD tweet, LGBT materials in the classroom. Should parents be allowed to say no?
The Supreme Court is weighing whether parents should have the right to pull their kids out of classes featuring LGBT-themed reading materials.
We became aware that these highly sensitive materials, gender ideology, was going to be presented in her class of special needs children. We approached the teacher and found out that there were no opt-outs available. We're really praying and hoping that the court will say no.
And is it appropriate for schools to teach children about gender and sexuality?
My dear sister-in-law taught in the public schools. She said, I feel like I'm hurting these children. Like if a child wants to be a strawberry, if I support that, she said, I feel like I'm hurting that child. I can't do this anymore. She's a wonderful woman, a great teacher, a progressive. But she's like, this isn't right by our children.
So we have a school system that is being exposed. Our final point of today's episode is MCPS bigotry exposed. We have an image there that reads, the lawyers promoting child indoctrination to SCOTUS were absolutely humiliated. This is by Matt Walsh, dated April 23rd, and it reads, the only way an ideology like this can survive is by targeting children before they're able to develop their cognitive abilities. So this is not done by accident. This is not done by, a test or something like that. This is done on purpose. They want to indoctrinate the kids into sexualized education. They want our kids to accept and embrace pedophilia. They want the groups like adults who love children or something like that, they are all on board. And we've asked Evan Glass numerous times, are you against pedophilia? Are you in favor? He has never responded. So that begs the question: is he supportive of pedophilia being taught in our schools or being indoctrinated to our kids? This is huge. This is completely huge. So MCPS is being exposed, and I mean, what else do you need to know? Who's been running the county for the last 4 decades? Who's been driving the rising crime, high property taxes, the stagnant low economic output and activity in the county? You can't find quality jobs in the county. You got to go to Northern Virginia. You got to go to DC to find jobs. And this again shows that the Democrats running the county are doing an awful job. And this is just an example of how they are choosing to promote pedophilia to our kids instead of focusing on core subjects. We have a tweet from Trace Gallagher that reads out, opt-out policies for Montgomery County, Maryland made it to the Supreme Court today, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett laid out her argument clear as day.
Well, the Fox News Tonight Common Sense Department talks a lot, but it's also pretty good at listening. And after listening to the Supreme Court today, Common Sense thinks the parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, who oppose LGBTQ books in the school system will be pleased by the court's decision. Truth is, you didn't have to listen that long because conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett laid out her argument with ration and reason, quick and easy. When she questioned whether schools are trying to expose children to different ideas or simply tell children that, quote, this is the right view of the world and that this is, quote, how you should think about things. In other words, our way or the highway. There was a time in Montgomery County when parents were allowed to opt out until too many parents opted out and absenteeism trended up. But instead of assuming that parents didn't like the curriculum, the school board decided that parents had better get used to liking the curriculum. Instead of searching for a solution, the left did what the left does, manufactured a mandate. Because competition does not work out well for those who are ill-equipped to compete, and the school board was ill-equipped. Common sense thinks it won't be long before the Supreme Court shows that a mandate should always be prefaced by a debate.
I think right now the most noticeable trait that is being exposed to the public of Democrats is the lack of common sense. And as we, GOPers that ran in 2022 for the council and school board, etc., common sense. It's not really that hard. You're not supposed to be teaching sexualized material or exposing sexualized material to kids who are in kindergarten or in elementary school. All right, let's continue. We have a tweet from LN24 International. Parents demand opt-out of LGBTQ themed story time. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear the case about whether parents can pull their kids from school classes that include LGBTQ related content, stating that it violates their religious right.
Hear that? In some schools, they said they would read one of those books every day for every day of the Pride Month. And they didn't want to admit that in some cases that could be brainwashing or be coercion or put the child under some kind of distress to read a book every single day, to promote Pride Month. If we dedicated the whole of December to reading a chapter of the Bible every single day, I'm sure there will be parents who have an issue with that. A few parents would probably think, but maybe I'm Hindu, maybe I'm Muslim. Okay, even though, yes, we would want that. Of course, as Christians, I would want every single day of the year to be dedicated. In fact, a worship song must be sang in school every day. The child must read from the Bible every day. That's the kind of education that I would love to promote for my child or for any child out there born to Christian parents or anyone out there, because we know what the scripture does. We know that the Bible keeps, the Word of God gives peace. The Word of God gives life. The Word of God is eternal life. So of course I would want to promote that. all right? But we're not forcing school boards to mandate that in schools. We're not. As much as we're praying that that would happen, and by God's grace it will, but we're not forcing it. But here we have people legislating that these books be, in some schools, they're even saying it's mandated that you should read it at least 5 times a year. So even if a school wants to come out of it, in some legislative councils, they are mandated to at least use one or whatever of the books they've approved 5 times a year. So even for your school, let's say you take a child to a Christian school, they might have to be subject to that mandatory law put in place in regards to these LGBTQ materials. So of course, the parents sued. Now getting back to Justice Samuel Alito, he asked, what are the ages of the children? Watch this.
You've made a very broad argument here at times, and it might be good, it might not be good, but let's focus on what's actually at issue in this particular case. What are the ages of the children who are involved here?
These books were approved for pre-K, which in Montgomery County can start as early as 3 if they're going to turn 4 that fall.
And it goes up to what?
The books that we've all talked about go through grade 6.
All right, so you're talking about children maybe in the age of 5 to 11 or 4 to 11. Now, would you agree that at a certain age, students are capable of understanding this point, which probably is not a point that can be understood by a 4 or 5-year-old, and that is that my teacher, who was generally telling me that certain things are right and that certain things are wrong, isn't necessarily going to be correct on everything. It is possible for me to disagree with him or her on certain subjects. Would you agree that there comes a point when a student is able to make that distinction?
That's right, and many of our clients' objections would be diminished as their children got older. But here we're in a situation where Montgomery County's own principals objected that these books were inappropriate for the age, that they were dismissive of religion and shaming toward children who disagree. The board itself withdrew 2 of the books for what it said were content concerns because it finally agreed that what parents and its own principals were saying was accurate.
Yeah, and one final factor that may distinguish this particular case from some of the others that you have been asked to express a view about, and you did touch on this, is the fact that it concerns sex and gender, and that the Maryland legislature itself has recognized these subjects raise special concerns and has provided for an opt-out from the health classes where these matters are discussed.
That's right, and currently in Montgomery County you can opt out from the very same instruction during health class, but then you're required to stay during story time.
Thank you.
There you have it. You have a school system that is forcing kids as young as 3 to up to 6th grade to be exposed to material that is highly inappropriate, highly sexualized, and the only purpose is to indoctrinate these kids for them to accept other family structures other than the nuclear family. Of course, there are families that have 2 moms, 2 dads, etc. That's fine. We respect those families, and again, we respect the LGBTQ plus community, but that material is inappropriate for our kids. When they our kids reach the age of adulthood, they can be exposed to it, and because they'll have the maturity, the mental maturity, and the emotional maturity to absorb the information and do as they wish with the information. So that is what's going on in the county. That's what's going on with the Supreme Court case that is dealing with the opt-out option in our school system. We'd like to thank you for your attention, and we ask you to please support Moms for Liberty. We ask you to support other parent organizations that are fighting on our behalf, and we give kudos to those families and parents that are stepping up. And we're here at MoCo Resistance. You will find a partner where you can use our medium to spread your message. We support your movement. We support the your message, and we hope that this case is won by parents, so we don't have to. I have 4 kids that have gone through, 2 kids that have gone through the school system. I have gone through the school system myself, and I got 2 young ones who are currently in the school system. That's why I'm fighting for this. That's why I'm fighting. I created this channel. That's why I threw my hat into into politics in Montgomery County, and I'll continue to fight. This is the resistance. We are here to resist the crazy, woke, progressive, communist, Marxist, socialist propaganda policies being pushed by a corrupt and criminal council, by a corrupt and criminal county executive, by a corrupt and criminal school system, by a corrupt and criminal judicial system, by a corrupt and criminal teachers union, corrupt and criminal Democrat political establishment in the county. So thanks again for watching this episode. We'd like to please share this far and wide in your social circles, and join us. Join the resistance.
He has shown thee, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of thee? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God.